Hello and welcome. You're watching To The Point. 48 hours after the devastating earthquake which hit Nepal on Saturday, there is a need to think about the massive task of rehabilitation that lies ahead. No doubt relief and rescue are still the first priority, but fast catching up is the need to plan to put Nepal back on its feet. What role can India play, and how much help can Nepal expect from the rest of the world? That's the subject tonight. Joining me now to look beyond relief and rescue to rehabilitation in Nepal is India's former ambassador to Nepal, Shiv Mukherjee, the Deputy Director Humanitarian and Disaster Risk Reduction at Oxfam, Zubin Zaman, a former member of the National Disaster Management Authority, KM Singh, and joining us from Kathmandu, the editor of Annapurna Post, Yuvraj Ghamire. Yuvraj Ghamire, beyond the immediate and obviously pressing concerns of relief and rescue lie the medium and longer term challenge of putting Nepal back on its feet. To try and understand how massive this task is and also what sort of role the outside world can play, let me begin by asking you, how massive is the devastation to Nepal's infrastructure? And let's focus on roads, buildings, electricity and water.
Well, it's quite a devastation, and Nepal was certainly not prepared for this. Like the moment the search and rescue operation is on, Nepal government hasn't even assessed how, what would be the support, what kind of support it would want. But at the moment, rescue, the treatment of the wounded, there's immediate rehabilitation, temporary rehabilitation, long-term rehabilitations are certainly necessary, but before that, the extent of damage, of property, life, they have to be made.
Okay.
One
other question. You're talking about the devastation mainly centered around Kathmandu. What information are you getting about the devastation through the countryside in rural Nepal?
Well, that's unfortunately, the case that we have not been able to get the whole fact about that. Those who are wounded and trapped outside Kathmandu, they have been airlifted and brought to hospitals. But the search in other areas where villages have disappeared altogether, in districts like Sindhupalchok, in Nuwakot, in Rasua, they have not even begun. We don't have we don't have substantial information about that part, and I think the worst is yet to come.
Okay.
So it is, the rescue and search operation that is continuing is certainly praiseworthy, but not adequate, and more worse things are yet to come.
Shiv Mukherjee, we have an indication there from Yuvraj Ghamire of the extent of the devastation that hits Nepal in terms of its infrastructure, its roads, electricity, water, buildings. Let me ask you, from your knowledge of that country, because you've been an ambassador there for many years, what do you believe is the state of the government and its ability to respond? I imagine many officials, many ministers have suffered enormous personal tragedies which have incapacitated them. How weakened and incapacitated is the actual system that now has to respond?
Well, at the best of times, the Nepali government, in terms of quality, in terms of their ability to face the crisis, is not in question, but it has always been, at the operational level, a small government. At the best of times, at normal times, the infrastructure in Nepal, the government infrastructure for dealing with something like this, or even something much less than this, is frail. So at this time, from what I gather from the few times I got through to Nepal and talked to friends, they're working, their hearts out, they're working 24/7. But with everything they've got, the efforts that they make need to be supplemented heavily.
So there's a real sense of a double whammy here. Enormous devastation, roads, electricity, water, villages in the countryside wiped out. And the capacity of the government to respond, as you say, at the best of times was weak, now probably incapacitated by the personal tragedies they've suffered themselves.
Absolutely, and Yuvraj is right when he said that it is really a double whammy, a future double whammy as well, because the extent of the damage is not yet really known. The casualty figures, it's
Those
very,
are
very hard to
part
say
of the
so. We'll go
horrific
to 5
details we
figures.
still have to find out about. You guys, one more quick question from you before I come to the rest of the panel. Beyond the government, what sort of disaster management or earthquake management authority does Nepal have? And secondly, what sort of a role is your army playing at the moment?
Well, as far as the army is concerned, I think is mainly, like acting as coordinator. It's coordinating with various, like Indian Air Force is here, Chinese team is here. I think Pakistan Air Force also came here. So other countries have promised. So Nepal Army has been playing a coordinating role basically, and it is not well equipped to deal with the kind of situation. But there is another problem also, that is, like it's more of a psychological, people are panic stricken, rightly so, because there has been series of 2 major earthquakes in a span of 24 hours and many, aftershocks and tremors in between. So there is, like a they're quite terrorized.
Absolutely.
To go to their home.
Tell me something.
Dealing with the psychological, yeah.
Tell me something. What sort of disaster management?
Dealing with the psychological
what sort of disaster management or earthquake management authority does Nepal have? Is it capable of rising to the occasion and the challenge?
No, Nepal doesn't have. The last major earthquake it faced was, the same in 1935. There was government involved, which went into reconstruction and all that. It doesn't have very adequately equipped earthquake management or disaster management unit of the government. It doesn't have any.
Okay.
Nepal Army is dealing with it, and it basically seeks support. It basically does the kind of thing to rescue people and all that,
Absolutely.
but certainly not well trained and not well equipped.
Mr. Kame saying that in a sense perhaps is a third whammy. Nepal doesn't have an effective disaster management authority. The army is playing, as Yuvraj Gumire says, the coordinating role, but there's not much more the army can do. Now, in these circumstances, the Indian government has sent today a multidisciplinary committee of senior civil servants, usually of the rank of additional secretary. They come from the ministries of Home, External Affairs, Defence and other ministries. Obviously, their first task is going to be to coordinate relief and to coordinate rescue. But then beyond that, will they be able to provide some sort of rudimentary outline for what's needed in terms of rehabilitation and what's needed in terms of putting Nepal back on its feet, so that while the rescue happens, the rest of the world can start thinking about the badly needed rehabilitation? Can they provide an outline, or would that be difficult?
No, it may not be very difficult, but I would like to talk in a different way. The outline that is going to be, if we go in a constructive manner with a long-term vision, it has to be in two phases. One is the immediate rehabilitation, maybe in 10 days, prefab buildings and all. Other is the long-term, and that is very, very important.
This is a very important thing you're saying. Rehabilitation has to be thought of as a 2-stage process.
Yeah.
There's the immediate one, where you need perhaps prefabricated buildings or more secure tents, and then there's the longer term, actually rebuilding the country.
Yeah.
Now, this team, can they contribute an outline to both stages or only to the first one?
It is possible, I'll tell you. I'll give you 2 examples in India. The tsunami devastation that happened in Andaman Nicobar, the final rehabilitation or reconstruction could not be up to the mark. Whereas we have another model of Bhuj earthquake. And let me tell you that the reconstruction work long term in Bhuj has become a model for the world.
What was the difference that made one successful and the other not?
Because if you do in a makeshift manner, most of the buildings are partly damaged. Another shock they will go. In Bhuj, what was done was that it was seen as if an opportunity to
start afresh.
Rebuild.
So literally demolish and rebuild.
Demolish, rebuild, and every building is earthquake proof.
But that of course now moves beyond the immediate rehabilitation to the second stage. Let me bring in Zubin Zaman. Zubin Zaman, what can Oxfam do to contribute to that critical first stage of rehabilitation? I'll come to the longer term second stage in a moment's time. What can you do to contribute to that first stage?
Our intervention currently is to ensure that life-saving assistance is provided immediately, which is in the form of safe, access to safe water and sanitation, food assistance, and emergency shelter. That's the immediate need.
Can I stop you there? Can I stop? In terms of safe water and sanitation, are you flying out supplies of water, and what are you doing in terms of sanitation?
In terms of sanitation, it's about actually getting, for example, you have the camps being established now, and these camps will have a large number of people living in very close quarters, and they would require sanitation services there, and for that, temporary latrines would initially be installed.
So are you flying those out?
In the meantime,
are you flying out temporary latrines that can be installed in camps in Nepal?
That's right. There are stocks that's actually being moved in we're trying to move in things from India with support from, our own internal sources, as well as there are water sanitation equipment that's being moved from the United Kingdom.
Can I interrupt again? When you say you're moving stocks from India, are you chartering planes to move them in? Are you taking it by land? But the land road, of course, is blocked in many places with landslides. What exactly is the manner in which this movement is happening?
The movement in the sense that we are actually assessing how we can move this material. However,
so it hasn't gone as yet.
Other materials, we haven't been able to shift it yet, because we understand. As we speak today, there are 2 staff members who have moved in from the UK, and they couldn't land in Kathmandu, but they are now actually inside an aircraft in Kolkata, waiting to take off tomorrow morning. Right. So that's the kind of situation we are in.
Actually, things will start happening after you've made an assessment of how you get them in, but you've outlined the sort of immediate responses that you have in mind, water and sanitation in particular, and those are critical, of course. Shiv Mukherjee, something else that's critical is fuel, and even more so, as you've probably seen on TV, electricity. Vast swathes of that country are actually in the dark once the sun goes down, which means rescue, rehabilitation, relief simply cannot happen in the dark. Now, today's Times of India says, and I think the Foreign Secretary at his briefing in the evening has confirmed, that 4 or 5 senior executives of the Indian Oil Corporation have been sent, and a dozen engineers from the Power Grid Corporation. Now, you know Nepal. How easy will it be for these people who are coming in from outside to resupply fuel, to get Nepal's stocks, which probably exist from the storage point to the depots to the selling point, to get Nepal's power grid up and running?
The supply, Karan, will not be a problem. Nepal's entire fuel supply comes from our refinery in Barauni, comes to Raxaul on the border, and then Birganj, and from there by tankers to Kathmandu and all the rest of Nepal.
So the only obstacle is
India to supply it will not be a problem at all.
So the only obstacle is blocked roads.
The obstacle will be blocked roads, and even after the fuel has reached the generating plants, Nepal's grid is in a woefully, sorry state. Long before the earthquake, electricity-wise, Nepal was suffering. Just whenever it doesn't rain, Nepal's Kathmandu suffers from 14-hour power cuts. Nepal has
that is the norm.
That is the norm, and in fact,
so then
power potential Nepal imports electricity from India. So even after the fuel reaches, it is not going to be 24/7 electricity.
So how great is the challenge of putting back on its feet a power grid that's collapsed, many pylons that have collapsed,
yes,
electricity wires that have fallen down?
The challenge is huge. Even after whatever existed earlier, before the earthquake, of electricity supply, the grid is up and running, there will be an enormous need for supplementing through generators, and these will inevitably fall short, and they will have to be allocated priority-wise first to hospitals, to save lives, and so on and so forth. So it is not going to be easy.
So we are talking about double and triple whammies. Now we've got to a quadruple whammy, because the absence of electricity will hamper simple relief and rescue after dark. And putting that electricity back is going to be a multiple task, because as you said, anyway Nepal has 14-hour power cuts. Now pylons collapse, grids collapsed, wires fallen. Putting that back is going to be a huge task.
And not to forget, whenever there's a shortage, the only source of supplementing that is from India, and the neighboring states, Bihar and Eastern UP, are chronically electricity short themselves.
Mr. Kem Singh, I presume there's a lot of international assistance that is waiting to enter Nepal and to help. I know, for instance, China is extremely keen to cooperate. I know Pakistan is cooperating, Britain, France, America, many of them are. Is there a need in this situation where there are multiple people wanting to help for a central coordinating authority that can A, decide the priority of what's wanted, and then B, decide which particular country takes on which particular task?
There are two models again I will mention. One is, if this coordination, can be done by Nepal government only, because ultimately they are the recipients.
Are they in a position to do it?
That will be difficult. But other model that I am coming to, there is, in this is a response mechanism, there is something called UN OCHA, United Nations Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Assistance. They are very well in this coordination. And they have.
So you're suggesting that in fact we may use their services?
I'm coming to that. And they have something called UNDAC team. They know how to coordinate within a different UNDAC team. Part of the UNDAC team has already reached Kathmandu.
So this task could be handed to them.
If they are a very good coordinator.
This task could be handed to them.
UNDAC can coordinate.
You wanted to comment?
With the greatest respect, I disagree completely. Handing it over to the UN for coordinating anything in Nepal, even on the best of times, would be disastrous. They have no knowledge of the country. The people they will choose come under the quota system of the UN. I've had experience of that. I speak from that experience. The only coordinating agency that will succeed in Nepal because of the local knowledge is Nepal, assisted by India. India will send in troops. On the ground, it's Indian troops under Nepal Army. We have 7 Nepali regiments from where we are sourcing the army people. We have 125,000 Gorkha retired soldiers who are headmen in their villages who will help in the coordination effort. The UN cannot do it. No other country can do it. They would be best advised.
Zubin Zaman, let me bring you in at this point.
Material, hand it over to the Nepali and the Indian coordinators and then back off.
Zubin Zaman, let me bring you in at this point. We're talking about the different types of international assistance and the need for a central coordinating authority. Are you planning an international campaign, because Oxfam is very good at organizing those, to help provide some of the assistance that Nepal needs in terms of specialized manpower, in terms of specialized equipment like diesel, because they don't have power, beyond simply water and sanitation that you talked about? In other words, are you prepared as an organization to expand the services you provide and to go further afield?
I mean, definitely. I mean, one part is the work that you implement on the ground, which is you implement a humanitarian assistance program, which is about water and sanitation, food assistance, emergency shelter. Then you take it to the next level, which is early recovery, addressing issues of livelihood, which will definitely crop up in addressing issues.
Tell me that, when you come to this question of early recovery and addressing issues of livelihood, what are the sort of things you could do? Give me a brief but explicit answer.
I mean, the explicit answer here is to actually assess. I mean, people would have lost their productive assets. People would have lost their income generating sources. We need to identify what those sources are. Then we need to actually plan and help them and reinvest into those livelihood aspects of various levels of income groups. I mean, it's the rich as well as the middle income, as well as the very poor who may have got impacted by this event. But the point is that, you know, assistance needs to go into ensuring that people's livelihoods are restored, because there has to be some way that we have to take this process forward.
Yuvraj Ghamire, we're talking about recreating people. Oh, sadly, we don't have Yuvraj Ghamire there. Let me put that to you, Shiv Mukherjee. We're talking about livelihoods. We're talking about recreating opportunities for people to earn and be able to live a life and rebuild themselves. Now, Nepal has not just been hit in terms of infrastructure. It's a tourist-dependent country, and its tourism infrastructure has been destroyed, and worse still, tourists themselves have been put off.
Right.
How much of a challenge would it be to gear up once again to receive tourists and then to convince them that they should come?
It will take a long time. My guess is at least if things go well, if the recovery process, the rehabilitation process goes without glitches and so on, it will take at least 2 to 3 years. I was in Egypt when tourism got smashed because of terrorist attacks, and it took at least 3 years for them to recover.
So at a critical moment of time when they actually need resources and they need finance, one great source of finance
is devastated.
It's devastated. Yuvraj Gimere, you're back with us. You know, we're talking about what the Indian government is doing to help Nepal. I know that you've also got a lot of assistance coming in from China, and I know that there's a sense of rivalry between India and China. At this moment of time, is there a sense in which Nepal is very grateful that both your neighbors want to do as much as they can to the extent of competing with each other, because that guarantees you 2 supply sources rather than just 1?
Well, I think there is, there is a sense of cooperation, and I think there is no difference between the 2 countries on this. Although the information that we have is Prime Minister Modi was engaged in, assessing the situation even before, Nepal government started assessing its own situation and the impact of disaster, and Indian help came quite fast. That in that sense, even before, perhaps even before Nepal government formally and officially solicited it, and China then came with a team of. So I think there is a sense of cooperation as far as these 2 countries are concerned in the moment. But let's see, the challenge lies in again assessing the extent of damage.
Absolutely.
And reaching the relief materials to the victims. So unless we know where the victims are and what is the extent of damage and suffering in other places outside,
you're making a very good point.
It's for the government of Nepal to decide, to at least bring the donor countries and neighboring countries to tell them, where their support is needed.
Very quickly, Yuvraj Gimere, a lot depends upon the government of Nepal, and while you were not with us because the line had broken, we were talking about the essential coordinating role that government has to play. How is it performing in the challenging circumstances? Give me a short answer. How effectively is the government of Nepal responding to this incredible challenge?
No, there are doubts. There are doubts that Nepal government would be able to do that because it's discredited for other reasons, political reasons, especially its failure to deliver the constitution, lack of clarity, and all that. So there are doubts, but we hope that this is in this tragic circumstances they forget their political differences and streamline their bureaucracy and secure the support.
I'm going to stop you there because you made your point very clearly and I'm running out of time. I want to ask Mr. Karan Singh something. In a situation where the Nepal government is incapacitated because of political problems that have undermined its credibility, as Yuvraj Gimere has explained, because they've suffered enormous personal tragedies that have also incapacitated them, are there Indian officials that we can temporarily send to work with the Nepali government as sort of on secondment to help stiffen the backbone of that system?
Before I answer,
answer that because I'm running out of time. So you have to stick to this.
Briefly,
please stick to this because we're running out of time. Answer my question.
But I never advocated UN.
Let's leave that aside.
But the point is, yes, we are capable. India is capable
of sending people on secondment.
Helping the Kathmandu government, Nepal government, with our expertise, we will definitely be able to help as much as possible.
Would the Nepalese people be willing to accept on secondment Indian officials who come and beef up their system, so to speak, particularly at a time when they themselves can't do it?
I would say yes. We ourselves don't favor sending large teams to sort of replace the role that the Nepali government should. We've always made it very clear that if they request assistance, human or material, it will be provided.
Very quickly, because I'm out of time. Do you think they should?
That's what the thing is. If they request for assistance in terms of human or material...
Do you think they should? You heard Yuvraj Gimere say the government is lacking credibility.
For the immediate crisis, yes, they should, wherever they need assistance, and I'm sure they will. My experience says they will.
And we will respond.
And we will respond.
All right, gentlemen, I'm going to have to leave it there. We've run right out of time on this particular half hour. We're going to, after this, go back and cover actual news events from Kathmandu and some of those terrific stories as well as some of those tragic ones that have been coming out. My thanks to both of you for coming to studio. My thanks also to my other guests. There we end this particular half of the show. In the second half, we'll be back in Nepal covering the awful tragedy that still continues.